Hello, it's Andrew with MidMillion.bike. Today we are going to talk about how to install these SW-R9150 satellite shifters on a TT or triathlon bike. Some of the complexity around this is that this is an 11-speed part, and in this case this is a 12-speed Di2 bike. The most important thing to know is that while this is an 11-speed part, it will work with a 12-speed Di2 system if you upgrade the firmware. You cannot upgrade the firmware in place on a 12-speed bike. You need to have an 11-speed bike or some other way to upgrade the firmware on them. Otherwise, they won't connect up. Actually, it kind of brings the whole Di2 system down when you plug them into a 12-speed system before you upgrade the firmware. That's really the only part that is going to be specific to 12-speed Di2. The rest of this will be applicable to pretty much any TT or triathlon bike that has Di2. Before getting too far into it, we should probably talk about why you might want to do this. So it didn't even occur to me to look it up because I just figured that it would work in more like road Di2 works. But there's only 4 buttons in total up here. And the way that you're supposed to use, according to Shimano, Di2 with a TT bike is by using full synchro shifting. And while that's probably okay, because like what you do then is like these two are down, these two are up. You don't get the magic of Di2 in that system because one of the biggest bits of magic in Di2 is the ability to change pages on your head unit and, you know, set a lap or whatever. And so while I can make do with full synchro, especially on a TT bike, it's hard. I'm never going to use a smaller chainring. I really wanted the ability to add page through on my Garmin and change laps and things without coming off the bars. So that's why I'm going to add these. Quick inventory of things that you'll need. Obviously the shifters. You'll almost certainly need one of these SMJC B junctions. They're the little boxy things that you usually put in the bottom bracket. This bike already has one up here for the wires and things that are up there. There's a little box or space in here. I can fit another one in there. So that's what I opted to go for. If for some reason you either don't have space for one of these junctions, or the way that your bike is set up, it might be a little different. You can also use one of the Y cables for handlebars if they're long enough and you have available ports on your on the whatever junction box is up front. It is highly likely that you will need 2 of these EWJC 200s. These are inline junctions. Basically, they kind of splice or connect up 2 Di2 wires together. I wasn't able to find anywhere where the length of this cable is documented. This is not a removable cable. It connects straight up into the button itself, probably for packaging reasons. It is 27 centimeters long, I think. I'll put a picture up there of how long it is. It's one of the things that I had to kind of do by feel. And so I ended up getting 2 of these EW SD50. These are 11-speed cables that will connect through here, through this junction, down here into the bike. In a aerobar that's like this, the round kind, you shouldn't have any problems with that at all. There's lots of space in here. There's no turns or no real turns or, you know, funky things that are going on in there. So that should just be easy. Go with that. On this bike, there is some complexity around that because the way the cockpit works. My fit makes it possible for me to put this guy in here, but there's no space in here for it. So if for some reason I needed to have the arm pad really far back and this part really far forward, it's quite possible that I wouldn't have been able to use one of these junctions. Then it becomes a little bit more complicated. Basically, what you got to do is cut the Di2 wire and solder it together. I have done that before. I have some example here somewhere. Basically, inside the wire, or inside the Di2 wire, there are two wires. What you do is you just open this up, strip those down, or open up two cables, strip it down, put some heat shrink, or precede some heat shrink on it, solder the two wires together, bring the heat shrink up, shrink it, and then put some heat shrink around the whole thing to get something that kind of looks like that. And basically it's watertight, weatherproof, and it works just fine. That's what you would end up doing if you can't use these junctions, but I'm going to use the junctions. Before getting too far into it, I should probably note that the shifters come with a couple different sets of these brackets, I guess, to hold the shifter. They are different heights, depending on what you want to use them for, I guess. I went with the short one. I didn't want the big one. I found that out the hard way. I thought they were interchangeable, so just something to be aware of. Another thing to note, when you're putting this together, there is a little space here for the zip ties that they provide. The zip tie kind of goes up in here. When you put it on the bar, you pull it tight, trim it, and then you shove it up, this part up inside of here, because there's space in there like I have here, and I'll put a photo of what that looks like. And then optionally, you might want some of this stuff. This SMEWC2 Di2 wire covers. That will depend kind of on how you do your installation and what you want it to look like. It is totally optional. I am planning to use, I had it on hand from when I retrofitted Di2 to a different bike. I'm going to put two of these kind of up underneath here because I wanted the wire to kind of go cleanly into this slot here, and I don't want it to hang out to grab stuff and, you know, look not awesome. So all in, the parts that I have, shifters, 3 different wires, 2 350 millimeter Di2 wires and 1 150 millimeter wire, and then the inline junction. So let's get started. So I've already done this one, so I'm going to show you how to do it on this one, on the right bar. One thing that makes it easier to work with these kinds of things, if you have a single unit, is to use a little bit of electrical tape or something to kind of hold everything together when you're messing around. Because it would be really easy for it to just kind of fall apart, and then you have parts on the floor and everything. It's just kind of a pain. This is loosened up in here, so allow adjustability back and forward from this carbon bit. I'm just going to release the electrical tape here a little bit so we can make some space to pull this out, because it will need to be out. There we go. Tape that back down again. Grab our shifter and slap that on. So we want it to kind of run in this channel here. So we're just going to kind of line everything up, push this through, and there is a hole in the back here. Oh, it came right out it. Where we can then kind of put this back together again. And we get our Di2 wire, grab our junction so that we don't accidentally lose it back inside the, and then the junction is going to go in this hole here. And this is the bit that I was talking about. If this was really long and you didn't have space in here to get the junction into this down part, then you'd have to splice the wires together. But fortunately, I have plenty of space here for that. The next part is to feed this Di2 wire through this part of the handlebar assembly. I have already put some of this tubing through here that I like to use for this purpose. I like to use this tube. This is inside the bike outer cable. And you might have noticed there's a little hole, the little wire connector in there. It fits perfectly around that, and it'll hold it in place. And so if you're not doing something really stressful, you can just use it as a guide. But I will often, if I can't get it to work nicely, I will throw a little bit of electrical tape on there sometimes, just to hold everything together. But I think I might be able to just make it through here, because it doesn't have to go very far. And it's not a very complicated run. It's mostly just about getting it through the hole here. So going this way kind of failed. I'm gonna try the other way now. See if I can do without electrical tape. I would hope that I would be able to, because it's not complicated. Just a little bit of a bend. Yeah, and that came right through there. So now undo my electrical tape here. Pull out my junction, feed this up through the bottom. Connect my junction, and then kind of get this stuff back inside there. 2 bolts hold the that together. So just gonna nip those in real quick. And grab my tape just to get everything kind of. I don't want to tighten anything up until I've tested everything here. So that'll hold. Quickly plug my button in. So this currently is still actuating the shifter here. I don't know if you can hear that. Hopefully you can. It is moving the shifter. That is not the long-term plan for this guy. Long-term plan is to make it a D-fly button so that I can change the pages and set laps and everything. But it is working, and that is awesome. Now let's do this one. All right, so that's everything assembled well enough. Now quickly, I mentioned how you do this, but I'm just going to quickly run through that again. So make sure these are nice and tight. The zip ties are nice and tight. Wire cutters, so you get a nice close cut. And then you just kind of want to feed them up inside of here so they don't scratch your hands. And then you just position these guys where you want them. And I want to get them kind of with this finger, that's the middle finger. So before we tape it, the last step would be to use these Di2 wire cover things just to kind of have a little bit slightly cleaner look underneath the bar. So I'm going to clean the bar here with some alcohol, just to make sure that it's not greasy with finger jam and stuff. So hopefully it sticks really well. And I mentioned this is totally optional. It is totally optional. I just had these laying around, so I'm going to use them. So that's the strips installed. Lastly, we should probably talk about bar tape. I'm not exactly sure what the best approach for this is. Everything I've tried a few different things. That's part of the reason why I did this one first. It turned out a little bit janky. I've seen some recommendations to use a hole punch on the area that goes around the shifter. I tried that with a couple different types of bar tape, like this Bontrager foam tape. I tried it with the Physique Bond Crush tape, and in both cases it really just didn't work very well. So I'm not going to go with that approach. What I am going to do is when I put this on, I'm going to kind of put it on and then use an X-Acto knife to kind of trim the little bit that kind of hangs over. but I'm not entirely sure it's going to ever look right. I think the best I can do is close to right. So let's get to that. So the tape is on, and the last step here, what I was going to do is just kind of trim around the button with this little very sharp little X-Acto knife kind of thing, just so it's not putting any pressure on it. Just kind of gently work around it. And I'm sorry you all won't be able to see this very well, but I will post a photo of what it looks like here on the side. So now that's trimmed up, the last bit obviously would be kind of shove all the wires and things back into this little hole down there, but I'm not going to show that because there's really no point. Hopefully you all thought that was useful. If you did, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below and I will get to them as soon as I can. Thanks.